Could you tell us more about the academics at the school? Could you tell us about the extracurriculars at the school? Could you name a few top recruiters of the school? Tell us more about the alumni events, or maybe how you were benefited by the alumni network of St Gallen. Any final advice for people who are planning to apply to this school?
Hi guys, so for today's top topic, we have with us Katelyn, who is here to share with us how her experience at St Gallen was. Welcome Katelyn, it's a pleasure to have you with us. How about we start with a short introduction about yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much, and I really appreciate you having me here. It's great to speak with you today. So my name is Katelyn Bauer. I'm an Australian Canadian who's been based for most of her life in Canada. And I had the privilege of studying at the University of St Gallen for part of my MSc degree, my master's. That experience really shaped both my academic perspective, also gave me many new skills, many experiences, and allowed me to connect with a whole new range of people, which has eventually brought me to where I am today, which is working in Europe. I'm currently based in London, England. And so really happy to speak with you today and kind of share my experience at the university, give any tips that I can to prospective students looking to study there.
Okay, all right. Could you tell us what made you choose St Gallen?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, the decision came down to a few different factors. I do speak German fluently. During my high school, my family lived in Germany for a few years, and so that's where I picked up the language. And I knew that I was really interested in the German-speaking region of the world, but I didn't want to return to Germany just yet. I figured a different German-speaking country would be an interesting experience. And so I started looking around at other universities in the German-speaking world. And to be completely frank, the University of St Gallen just kept on coming up #1 in all of my searches. And reputation-wise, I would say it's completely unrivaled, especially within the German-speaking world. And the more that I learned about the university, the more I thought this sounds like it could be a really great fit. The university is known for being rigorous, for attracting, I would say, a very ambitious kind of student. It's also a small town, so not the kind of place that you would tend to live in your working life, but more the place that you would go specifically to study. And so I kind of thought, well, if I don't go now, when would I get the chance to live in St Gallen? It might be a really good place to choose. So that was my thought process, and that's ultimately why I decided to go there.
All right, so how was your experience at the school?
It was absolutely amazing. One of the best experiences of my life, and I would, if I could go back in time, I would choose to do the same thing over and over again. I think I came in being a little bit hesitant, knowing how small the town is, how small the university is. My previous experience had been in much bigger cities and much bigger institutions, and I was a little bit worried that I might be bored or there may not be very many things to do, but when I arrived, I think it took me a week to feel at home. And the minute that I got into classes and I started meeting my classmates, everyone was just so welcoming. There was such a strong cohort feeling. The individuals that I was in group projects with were so smart and hardworking, and it just never for a moment did I regret my decision. It was fantastic. Yeah.
All right, okay. Were there any hurdles that you faced initially when you joined the school?
I think similarly to any time you choose to study outside of your home country, there's going to be the visa process, you have to organize a place to live, there might be bank accounts to set up, and potentially linguistic barriers as well. And every country is different. So even though I've moved before in my life, getting to know the Swiss system, understanding what I was supposed to do or maybe not do, it obviously takes a little bit of time. But I would say overall, for anyone considering moving to Switzerland, the Swiss bureaucratic system, the way that it's set up, is incredibly easy to navigate, especially for somebody who speaks English. The officials are able to answer any questions that you have. And I found the process of moving, quite straightforward overall. So I would say, other than the typical things that you might face when you're looking to move, there wasn't really anything that would stand out to me as being a major hurdle.
All right. Okay, great. Could you tell us more about the academics at the school, the courses?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say the University of St Gallen has a really unique way of setting things up. So first of all, the way that you actually choose courses is done on a bidding system. So you are allocated a certain number of points at the beginning when you get your student ID. And you obviously have certain classes that you need to take, and then you have certain electives. And you use your points to bid, like gambling in a way, on the courses. And that's especially pertinent for any elective courses that you're looking at taking. There's several different rounds. So depending on how badly you want to take a course, because you've heard the professor is amazing or the subject area seems particularly interesting, you definitely want to allocate more points to that course. Obviously, if you don't get the course, those points are then returned to you before the next round of bidding. So that can be a little bit, I would say, unique to figure out at the beginning. But I found that the local students are more than happy to help out anytime that you're kind of struggling with that process. So once you have all of your courses chosen, I would say the other aspect that is quite unique is the length and the way that they are set up. So for me personally, in all of my previous university experience, my courses have always been 1 semester long, and I've typically taken maybe 4 to 5 at a time, maybe sometimes 6. But it's always been for the same time period. They've all been the same length, maybe 1 time per week. One of the unique things about St Gallen is that they have courses that are worth various different amounts of credit. So you have some courses that are worth more, you have some courses which are worth only a few small credits. And those are really useful in that oftentimes they cover specific skills that you might be interested in learning, maybe R programming or different kinds of coding courses, potentially also language courses. And they also have really intensive week-long seminars, and oftentimes those are actually involving traveling. So I know a few peers of mine, they traveled to the World Trade Organization. Other courses involved individuals traveling to London or traveling to a UN organization to really understand and practice how that organization worked. Obviously, there is an academic component to those practical courses as well, in that you would typically write a paper or give a presentation. But if you choose to, you can fill a lot of your semester with these really intensive courses, and therefore kind of plan in having more intense periods of time in your courses and your semester, and then other periods of time where you won't have as much coursework because you've chosen to have courses of different length. So I personally found that very unique and really interesting. And I think depending on how an individual wants to set up their coursework, that can be a really great benefit to have that flexibility that not every course is the same length, and that some are more intensive, some are worth more credit, and so you can really focus where you want to.
Okay, so could you tell us about the extracurriculars at the school, like for example, clubs or events that take place, and how active were you in those?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say St Gallen completely blew my expectations in that regard. I know student involvement can really vary at some European universities, especially coming from a North American context. There are so many clubs and societies, and I would say it is really common to be involved. I think personally, it would be a shame if you were to go to St Gallen and not get involved, because there's just so many things to be involved with. Everything from cultural clubs, there's kind of a foreign students club that oftentimes takes trips and travels around. There are banking clubs, there's consulting clubs, there is a women in business club. There's a club that deals with technology in business, and they put together a conference every year. And I would say one of the most important things to make note of is the St Gallen Symposium, which, if you're not familiar with, it's a student organized conference that brings together leaders from around the world. So people such as the CEO of McKinsey and presidents of some countries, like really, really important people. And there's a theme every year, and they very much promote thought leadership and really thinking about where is the world going, what are the current trends. It's almost like a version of Davos, if you've heard of the World Economic Forum and the conference that they put on every year. I would say the St Gallen Symposium rivals that. And what's really unique about the symposium is it brings current leaders, so individuals who are likely kind of 40 to 60. It brings up and coming leaders, so oftentimes young politicians or individuals who founded startups. And they also bring future leaders. And those are typically selected through an essay writing contest, where it brings young people, oftentimes in their 20s, that have really ambitious ideas about where the world is going, and everyone is together in one place to talk about these issues. So the students run this entire conference. There is no faculty or I would say outside involvement in terms of how the conference is set up. And so that means there are so many ways to get involved. So you can be involved in the advertising, in the logistics, in potentially running seminars and getting to speak and moderate some of these discussions. I was involved with the symposium. It was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. It was so incredible. So if you get the chance to join, I would highly recommend it. And of course, the other clubs are really great too. There's so many different ways to, I would say, develop your leadership skills, connect with other students. And I would also say connect on both a professional and also a social level, because that's really important too, is to remember that people aren't professional 100% of the time. It's important to connect with your peers on that human level as well. Yeah.
All right. Okay, great. Okay. Moving forward, could you tell us about the job prospects at the school and also the career services? Like, what kind of assistance is available for the students?
Yeah. So there is a career office at the university. They are able to edit resumes in both English and in German. So depending on your fluency in German, and if you are potentially looking to work in the German-speaking world, they're obviously able to give tailored advice to, you know, what more traditional German-speaking companies would be looking for. But they are able to both edit resumes, they can do mock interviews with you, they can have discussions with you about, you know, where you're potentially looking at going and what sort of prospects you might have. Two other things that I'll touch on, I would say, one is that the alumni are incredibly involved at the school, especially alumni that work at, you know, specific companies. They'll oftentimes hold special recruiting events, so breakfasts, cocktail hours, dinners, various different events where you get the chance to speak to people that work at the companies. So that's very common, I would say. And the other thing is there is a conference put on every year in the spring that they call it the Startup Days. And it's a place where I would say conservatively at least 100 companies come, and they have stands in a big conference hall, and it's all just for the University of St Gallen students. And so it's a chance for you to go around and talk to all of these different companies, understand, you know, what area do they operate in? Do you connect with any of the people that are at the stand? Are you interested in applying for them? Do they have summer internships? What are their internship requirements? All of these different things. And it's sometimes nice to meet somebody in person as opposed to just going onto their website and kind of hoping that you get some of the right answers. So that's, I would say, a very unique event that the university puts on.
All right. Okay. Could you name a few top recruiters of the school?
Oh gosh, so I would say banks for sure, especially UBS and Credit Suisse, really big names. If you're interested in consulting, all of the big consultancies have offices in Zurich and they do a lot of hiring. So by that, I mean like McKinsey, BCG, A.T. Kearney, EY, Deloitte, and also Monitor Deloitte, PwC, all of those. And then obviously there's some Swiss companies as well. So depending on how familiar you are with Switzerland, companies such as Migros, so that's the largest grocery store chain in Switzerland. Obviously, if you're interested in logistics, something like that company might be quite interesting. And also some of the automotive companies or hardware manufacturing companies in the area as well.
So could you tell us more about the alumni events, or maybe how you were benefited by the alumni network of St Gallen?
Yeah, definitely. So gosh, there's so many. I think, so some of them are organized by clubs. So I went to some of the women in management events, being a woman myself. And I found those, just really interesting, listening to, successful younger women speaking about their experiences, and some of the more senior management speaking about their journey, kind of coming from my age now into the experiences and the positions that they're in today. But yeah, there's obviously the company run events as well. I would say those typically center around either a meal or an activity. So that's quite nice. Some of them are unique, where you make chocolates with the company, or you get to go paintballing with the company. And the idea behind doing some of these activities, I think, is that you get to know your potential colleagues on a more personal level. Because especially in banking and consulting, when you're working really long hours, I think especially in Swiss culture, there's an emphasis put on getting along and understanding, can I have a conversation with this person? Yes, they're smart. Yes, they're dedicated. Yes, they got amazing grades, but do I want to spend potentially 12 or 14 hours in a day working with them? And so if you're able to do a fun activity and make small talk and have a good time, there's a better chance, right, that you'll actually get along and be a good team. So I found that quite unique and quite interesting. And I would say, as far as frequency for those events, depending on the time of year, obviously there'll be more or less, but I would say at least one a week. And oftentimes you're looking at potentially 3, 4, or 5, and that's where you need to go back to your priority list and kind of looking at your calendar and figuring out, okay, this week, do I have assignments due? Can I afford to be out every single night doing these kind of events, or do I need to prioritize? All of those student struggles that we all have to deal with.
Any final advice for people who are planning to apply to this school?
So I would say, once you are there, it's going to be hard work, right? It is a rigorous school. You are going to work very hard. And your classmates are going to push you to work even harder, because some of the smartest people I've met in my life was during my semester there. But I would say it's worth it. So if you're even considering it, it's worth putting in an application, because you will have the time of your life. You will learn so much and really be pushed, I would say, both academically and personally, to come out as an entirely different person. So I would say the advice would be, don't doubt yourself. I think the university is a lot more diverse than some people might potentially think. There's a really strong international community, and just because you haven't necessarily been raised in a German-speaking family or in Switzerland, it doesn't mean that you won't find a home there, and it doesn't mean that it isn't a great institution for you. And so, yeah, I would say this to all of the clients that I work with, know your story, be confident in who you are, and articulate both what you want to get from the program, so why this is the next logical step in your life is to go here, but also what you can bring to the program. And I think that second part is something that a lot of people at the beginning don't always think of. But when a program is thinking of accepting you, it isn't just what they are going to do for you that they're interested in. They also want to know, once you've graduated, what are you going to do for them? Are you going to be involved as an alumnus of the school? Are you going to come back and give talks or be willing to speak to alumni? Are you going to go on and found a company and then be able to come back and share that experience? So I think reflecting on these things as you put your application together is really important, and then obviously articulate that in your essays and the pieces of your application.
All right, okay, great. It was awesome talking to you, Katelyn, and I'm sure I'm definitely, my belief has strengthened now after our conversation that, St Gallen has definitely earned the title of being one of the best schools worldwide. And yes, it was great talking to you. Thank you so much for taking out the time for this, and yes, good luck for your future ahead.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, same here.